right, I'll call the meeting to order. I would take approval of the regular agenda as it's presented.
So moved.
It's been a motion by Rick. Is there a second?
Second.
And Sean seconds it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, item 3 is bids update and funding discussion. Updated project budget.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Really, this was obviously the crux of why we called this meeting. Bids came in last Tuesday, and then also to kind of talk funding options, so that come next week at our council meeting, we've had the information for a full week. So I guess I will hand it off to John McNamara from Wold to kind of give us an update on how the bid process went.
Evening, Mayor and Council. It's nice to be here tonight. As you're aware, we read the bids for the police edition last week on Tuesday. And as you can see by the bid tab, we had great interest and we had a great crop of contractors that came out to take a look at this and put some numbers together on it. We did get 11 bids on there, and the bid tabulation has them in order of low to high. So our lowest bid was just a little bit under $8 million, and our high bid was over $9.6 million. And so again, really good tight bids. It tends to suggest that they're all looking at the same things, looking at their subcontractors in the same way. So it's nice to see that interest. One thing of note, we did bid one alternate with the project, which is listed on here as updated automated controls for the fire station. So this will allow the addition and the fire station to communicate and be as one building. So this upgrades some of the controls on the existing mechanical systems in the fire station. So again, that's optional, but it seemed like the right thing to do based on having those buildings occupied by the police department. This will allow the automation system to work for both buildings. And again, we have included that in the updated budget, and again, it's at the council's discretion as to whether or not we award that, but given that we are under budget overall, it seemed prudent to take care of that maintenance item as well. In addition to the bid tab, you have an updated budget for the project. The last council presentation is the second column to the end there, labeled construction documents, where we had projected total project cost of $12.5 million, broken down into $9.8 million in construction with a $265,000 construction contingency. We had project costs in the amount of just a little under $1.1 million, and we had our furniture and equipment budget at $1,045,000, giving us that total of $12.2 million. Utilizing the low bid number, we are recommending a revised project budget of $10.8 million, broken down into the construction numbers based on the bid, including that alternate and a $600,000 contingency. We have $1.2 million for our soft costs, and we've adjusted the furniture and equipment allowance to be more in line with the design documents for the furniture phase of the project, which gives us then again that a total project budget of $10.8 million.
Josh, could you put that up on here? I didn't bring my laptop with me. I wanted to.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Maggie. Not yet.
John, while you're waiting for that, could you go into a little more detail what that mechanical is? Is that like for heat or?
Yes, so there are a number of air handlers that are in the fire station that are, the controls on them are original from when the fire station was built, and so this would replace the controls that are on those mechanical units with new ones, which would then integrate into the building automation system that we're installing as part of the police project. So the police project will have that system regardless.
Right.
And so this just adds the mechanical systems for the fire station into that building automation system.
Why did?
Is that the only fixture that's that attributes to the 61,000?
Correct.
Just the air handlers?
Yeah, it's the controls for the mechanical systems. It's probably controls for some of the
On the fire,
downstream.
on the fire side?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so this isn't really a cost to the police station then?
It is not, no, not specifically.
Is there a reason that we went with a lighting panel like that, like the fire department? Because I've heard that it's the reason that they can't get the parts anymore, that that's an obsolete, is that not true? In the fire station now, and that's why it's being added in here?
It's possible, the systems are not, probably in service anymore. And so at some point, the city would need to update the control systems for those mechanical systems. Regardless of this project, it just seemed prudent at the time to do it, when we have a controls contractor on site doing the work in there.
No, I understand that part, but I was wondering why we chose to do another panel system as opposed to switches and whatnot, just because it would, if we run into the same problem 15, 20 years from now, then we have to.
Maybe I'm not following your question.
Well, I don't, we'll wait till we go in there, because I happened to talk to a electrician that reviewed the plans and whatnot, and we can go over it. I got a bunch of other questions. I don't wanna take you away from this, so we'll come back to that.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, we'll go ahead.
Okay, so, and this is just the electrician part, but, master electrician, 20 years' experience, his company sent him over to review the plans, because they were gonna put a bid in with the general contractor for the lighting. And one of the comments he said to me was, it just was overkill, there was so much. And I was like, well, that's funny, because we asked if there was a way we could skinny this thing down, and it never really did get skinny down. Thankfully, the bids came in under where we thought they were, but, and he brought up this lighting panel, and that fact that the fire department can't get parts for their lighting panel. And he made the comment like, why do they have to have a lighting panel? It's so much more expensive than just using switches. And I don't know what that exactly means, if it's not automated lighting, if you have to actually flip a switch, whatever. You can walk into a room and they pop on automatically. But he just said, he goes, it was just a lot of overkill, and just the electrical side is what he thought. He thought he could do it for like a third of the, he could probably save us a third by doing things different. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you think of the overall project with the electrical part is? I mean, 10%? And he goes, yeah, probably 10%, maybe a little bit more for the whole building. And if he's thinking that he can save a third of, and 10% would be $1 million, right, on the $10 million that it's costing. If there's $330,000 right there that he thinks there could have been other alternatives that have been just as nice, just as easy to do, that most people probably would have done. But it's not a government building, it's not, if it were coming out of a, Joe Schmo's security company instead of the police department, that the taxpayers fund, that it might be different. So I'm just wondering if, and that's just electrical, so then plumbing, is there a third of savings in plumbing that maybe there would have been another alternative to? The HVAC stuff, was there a third in that? I mean, all of a sudden you start adding that, each one of those is 10, 20%, and if you can save a third or 30%, we could have skinnied it down, but we never really did. We still could have had a really nice building that would have worked just fine, but it might have been 8 where we were trying to get to, or we had thrown that number out there, and it just never got skinnied down. So I'm curious if that's, and that's just one person's, but he's certainly qualified to have that opinion, why we couldn't skinny this thing down earlier from the get-go. And it was at 12 million and it's basically stayed there, or 13 million.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can sit here and answer those questions tonight, because they're not something that I'm privy to. I don't know who this person is that you're talking about. There obviously is an opportunity for the project to make changes after it's awarded. If people have opinions on that and they want to look into that stuff, I'd be happy to find out what specifically, I don't even know if this particular contractor is the actual low bid electrical contractor.
To be honest with you, no, he did not. He was not, so.
Yeah, and so, whether his number, how it compares to the low bid electrical, There's so many nuances that I don't know that I can answer that question. We traditionally design these things to last a long time. I can't say what this gentleman was suggesting and as to whether or not the city would have to then replace things or change things later on. We've been doing public buildings of this caliber for 50 years, so I have to trust that our engineers have looked at this stuff and are putting these together that are comparable to other cities of similar.
Are your engineers, are they paid a percentage of the overall cost of the building?
They're
Or-
employees of ours.
No, but I mean, are they,
Work on.
do they work on a commission or any type of percentage that if it was a 15 million, it's, instead of your fees being, so your fees would have been $685,000 regardless of if it was a $8 million or if it was a $12 million or $13 million?
No, our bids are based on a percentage of construction costs, which were
Okay.
established quite a long time ago, and I think where we're at today is actually very similar to where we were at the beginning. The project has gone up and down since the planning stages of it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we can go on.
Okay, all right.
I had some questions on this page also, if I could. The numbers that you have on this page, these are your numbers, the changes that were made were your?
Correct.
Okay. So then, I'm trying to understand with the lower construction number now that we have, what's the thinking on doubling the contingency, more than doubling the contingency? I would think now that we actually have a bid, the risk in the projections would be less because we're using an actual number now, but, so why are we going up that much, I guess?
Just to protect the overall project, this is money that is in there as a budget line item in there, and if we don't end up using it, it's, the city's money. So we're just making sure that we're taking due diligence in the construction phase of it. Typically, on a project where it's additions and renovations, anywhere in, that 3 to 6% for construction contingency is fairly typical. And understanding we wanted to try to make sure to be conservative in our numbers. We were carrying a fairly low contingency throughout the design phase of it, and so this just trues that up. But again, we can make whatever adjustments to those line items that you'd like. The only fixed numbers in here are the construction numbers, some of the fees and testing numbers, but all the contingencies are kind of rules of thumb based on a typical project of that kind, so.
Right, and I guess that's where I was coming from. What changed from the last 3 or 4 iterations to cause such a significant increase in the amount allowed for contingency? Was there some additional risk identified, or are you just trying to be, because, or is it just because we got a low bid and we thought we'd make it bigger?
Well, so if you go all the way back through the line items, all the way back to the original budget, the contingency is very similar to what it is that we have in there today. And throughout the design phases of it, we've adjusted that to try to keep the overall project costs in alignment. Some of it is estimated contingency, some of it is project contingency and stuff like that. So if you'll notice that I was lowering it as we went through schematic design, through construction documents. And if you go back to the original planning stage, we had the contingency was up close to where it is now. And again, we're not suggesting that you can't lower it. We're just trying to be cautious in the numbers so that we don't end up in a situation where we find some unforeseens in there that then we have to come back to the council later on.
So I just want to make sure I understood what you said. The highest number on this page is 470,000.
Yep.
So there was a number higher than that in the past?
So at the original budget, we had 470,000 and then another $470,000 down in the project cost, so that was 960,000.
Or you're
So-
adding other ones? that are
Correct,
further
and
down?
so then if you go to the bid one, it's 600,000 plus roughly 300,000, so we're at 900,000 overall between construction contingency and project contingency, right? So I just reallocated things based on actually having the actual bid numbers today. Do
you see there's multiple lines with contingencies on them?
Yeah, I just, obviously, our current contingency for construction is the highest percentage that we've had. And I'm just trying to, that just doesn't dovetail with what I would think you would
And
do.
I
but-
should probably apologize. I probably could have kept it in the similar format that we presented at council before, which had all the contingency in one line item.
Okay,
You know, if we go back to the last presentation, I had all of the contingencies in one line item. And all I did for purposes of today was allocate some dollars to the construction side of things and some dollars towards the project side of things.
so on the owner and soft cost, the contingency's higher, and in the last one, it's the same. So I guess I don't follow what you, it seems inconsistent with what you just said.
Yeah, I didn't bring those presentations, but in the last presentation of the council before we went out to bid, all of the contingency was in one line item in the budget versus being split out between construction and project soft costs.
I can see the 4 iterations ago, it was significantly 470 and 470. Last iteration was 265 and 260, and
Correct.
the 95 was consistent throughout, so that's not a factor.
Yep.
So it just jumped out at me as being a big number, and it's significantly higher percentage than we had before. And I would think the risk has gone down that we had a bid now. So that didn't jive with me mentally. And then I just have to ask that because I think it's my response in city council, but our architectural fees is a fixed percentage of the construction cost that was estimated from beginning, is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not gonna change any of the other fees based on a percentage of actual construction bidding?
No.
Just the permitting probably?
Permitting is by the contractor. Plan review is carried in there as a budget item.
And then the bidding, advertising, printing, that shows up as a new expense. Is that just because we forgot to put it in earlier, or it was included in the previous 4 iterations ago? But it hadn't been there.
It's always
now
been there.
it's-
This is just a little bit more detailed budget now that we are actually at the end of the design and bidding phase of it.
Yeah, it's a little confusing because the first one shows it's included, then it's 0, and then it shows up as a separate item again. Okay. And then, can you walk through the furniture part, because that's a number that changed also, that looks like we're reducing our furniture by 160,000 if you add the 4 items that are now itemized or
Yep.
instead that were put together. Can you explain what's going on there?
In the early stages through design, we carry it as a percentage of the total construction cost. Right, it's roughly about 6%. And looking at what we were actually proposing for locations where we might have new furniture, it was clear to me that the $600,000 was too high. And what we wanted to do is come to the council with a dollar amount for the total bonding that was more in alignment with what would likely actually happen. It would be very challenging based on what we're showing for offices, workstations, chairs, and refrigerators, and, you know, lab equipment and stuff like that to spend the $600,000. So I just made an adjustment to be more in alignment with what's realistic based on what we're showing in the drawings.
So, and I can do the math, but maybe you can just answer it quickly for me. If the construction bid was 7,980,000 based on the previous estimate of 9,000,008, but so that's a reduction of 1,000,008, and our bonding or funding a total is 10,000,008, which is only a reduction of 1,000,004. So we're basically losing 400,000. That might not be the right word, but that's basically the contingency mostly, and then and the
Furniture.
advertising furniture. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
How come the furnishing consultant fees and whatnot, they're just included above? How come those aren't broken down more specifically? And we have to pay a consultant to pick furniture?
You don't have to. It's up to you how you want to do furniture. If the city has a process where they've used a furniture vendor that works as well, it's certainly something that we have done for a lot of our clients, but it's, again, it's an optional service that the city would have to.
Oh, that your company provides?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think it'd be nice to see those broken down. And then, so we could pick that maybe we don't, I don't know what it is, maybe it's realistic.
And I'm
And it
assuming
could be
that's
real
something,
exorbitant too.
and I'm assuming that's something, assuming we move forward, that we'd have time to work through, as to how the whole furniture thing is gonna look.
Okay, well, that kind of parlays right into my next question then. So if the bid came in based on everything that your design has, is that correct? And the contractor has to stick to that, right?
Correct, yeah.
If we were to meet with the contractor and say, hey, if any of your subcontractors come up with savings that we want that rolled on, is that typically something that could happen, or is that something that would just line the contractor's pocket, because he
No,
just,
no.
because he'd be running corners around what the design was?
So we're always open to contractors proposing, value-based things. We would want to then review those to make sure that the city is getting good value for those changes. As you're looking at it as a deduct, I would want to make sure that we're getting good value for the deduct based on what they would be proposing to do. We always encourage contractors to come and propose voluntary deducts if they see something that they would like to do. It comes into play quite a bit when a project might come in slightly over budget. It's not something that we would discourage, right? And so what ultimately would happen is we would issue a proposal request to the contractor for whatever value-based changes need to occur. We review those with the city, and then the city would make the decision as to whether or not they would do that, and it would be processed as a deduct change order to the contract.
Okay. And I'll ask a question. I don't know if it's, because I'm not an electrician, but, or an engineer and design engineer, but, in reviewing the plans, the person that I had talked with, the master electrician, said that there was service that was, essentially routed completely around the building. He said that is like an added cost right there. That just, is there a reason for something like that? And I don't know what he'd be talking about. I'd have to get more detail from him.
So in order for us to reuse the existing generator that's out there already that the city owns, we need to be able to connect that generator with the new service coming into the building. So we are cutting in a new line that goes from the new electrical room all the way to where the existing generator is at the fire station, right? So that we can now have full building backup for the addition on there. So we have to have a service that comes into the new police station, and we're gonna use that as the main service for the building, because we can only have one service for that building. And then that new service, which is part of the police station, is gonna backfeed into the fire station, right? So there's a whole switchover in utilities. He's not wrong. I don't know about the looping of the building thing, but per the code, this is how we have to do the police addition. We can't just reuse the existing service at the fire station.
Okay, all right, well, that explains that then, so.
So there'll only be a 1 meter entrance.
Correct.
John, could you refresh my memory on the equipment allowance? What types of things that would be? Is it fixture based?
Any loose equipment that's not built into the building, probably refrigerators in the break room, could be equipment in the evidence processing area.
So it's personal property,
Correct.
basically?
Yep.
So I'm just wondering if that should be financed on a long-term bond, or if there's funds the police gets that they can fund.
Certainly has been done that way before.
Right.
So,
But it's all personal property, that's what this light on him is?
yep. It's for whatever we don't have included in the bid project that's not actually attached to the building.
So, let me get a question, because it was relates to what he was talking about before. You've got, let's say we were to pick Metcom, and you got the $7,988,000, and you go down to Ram General. there's about 1.6, 1.7 million
Yep.
difference. But yet you've still got the same amount of the alternate, or the, contingency funding doesn't change, correct? So if we were to pick this, if it would cost, the 9.5, you're still gonna have the same, contingency amount in there, no matter what. And, once we do pick, let's say we pick Metcom tonight, all the material, all the, cost and everything is in there, and there'll be something in the contract saying, we're not gonna have a bunch of change orders popping in and out of here.
Well, let's be clear, change orders are related to things that aren't, already included in the bid documents, whether something is added to the project, or there's an unforeseen condition on the project, or there's a difference between one manufacturer and another manufacturer, but all of those things would get reviewed with us to make sure that they are either in alignment or not in alignment with what the bid documents require. Can't guarantee there won't be any change orders, because there could be deduct change orders. There could be unforeseen conditions as we try to tie the two buildings together, but we do our.
So
darndest
nothing that
to-
would add up to that 1.7.
No.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Bruce?
I guess the first question I should have asked, obviously, I am very happy that the bid is below, but what do you attribute the significant difference between the estimated construction cost and the bid?
I wish I had a crystal ball, and I would love to be able to tell you, but I think based on most of the conversations that we've had as a firm, it's a lot of market uncertainty. There's a lot of contractors are looking to lock in work before unforeseen changes happen, before a recession occurs. So there's a lot of concern. We've had a lot more bidder interest in projects recently. Our estimators, while they're good, this was an estimate that they did probably 3-4 months ago, right? So, things have changed quite a bit, and I would say that this is indicative of some concerns out there in the construction trades. I can't speak for them because I don't know. I haven't actually asked them as to what their long-term vision is for this, but the numbers on a lot of projects have been coming in quite a bit less than what our estimators are projecting right now.
I guess, yeah, I was thinking it was gonna be just the opposite, with the uncertainty would actually cause
I was
more
worried
risk,
too.
risk, number be thrown in there.
Yeah, it was a very good bid day, so.
Yeah.
And are we affected with, if we have a deal, I guess we're not affected by tariffs and whatnot?
No, I mean, the contractor has to make their best assumption based on what they think material costs are gonna be. And keep in mind, any tariffs, any of that type of stuff are only affecting the material side of the project. The labor side is still here, so the material side is, I don't know, whatever, is probably 45% of the total construction costs, or whatever that particular thing is that might be subject to a tariff is some portion of the labor side of things.
Did you see anything in the numbers that you would say, well, they might have added on more because of potential tariffs?
We have not seen their breakdown.
Detail?
Yeah,
Okay.
because until the project gets awarded, it's not something we can get.
Okay.
But it's a great question, Councilman. I'd love to see it myself.
Interesting.
The, I guess it's not necessarily a question for you, John, but the alternative one, would that be shared with the rural fire then? That cost?
That's a very good question. I'm not entirely sure off the top of right now, and I can certainly look into that, being that it is part of the fire building. I think there certainly could be an argument there that, what does that amount to? Half of a half, I think you'd argue, since it's half of it's fire and then half of that, so roughly 15,000. But yeah.
Why wouldn't it be 30,500?
Well, I mean, so if it's 61,000,
Right.
half of that goes to the police department, half of it goes to the fire department. And then so that 30,500,
I'm sorry.
half of that would be split by the.
But John said none of this is applicable to the police station. We can build a police station without this.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, these are specifically for mechanical equipment inside the fire station.
Oh, I thought it was to make the two talk together.
So it's all
Well-
fire.
Well, then yes, in that case, then yes, it would be
Yeah.
about $30,000. I would assume so, I can certainly check into that, but I would assume an upgrade to the building would be split with the rural.
I apologize if it makes it, if you feel like we're throwing the screws to you, but this
Oh,
are.
sir, those are
This
other
is our only
great
chance to
questions.
kind of do this. And have a better understanding of it.
So would we have to award that alternative right away?
I have been in situations where we award it later. There will come a point in time where it'll cost more.
Yeah, I
Because
guess what I'm
further they
getting
get
at
into the
is
project.
because we're not gonna get a quick answer, cause that'll have to go to the rural fire board.
Well, and we're not necessarily, we're not looking to award any bids tonight.
Yeah,
So,
no, I know.
With our plan, we still have a few weeks, we just wanted to get this information
Yeah.
certainly in front of you.
So then maybe by then, okay.
So we have, right now, because of the bonding thing, we put 45 days on the bids. So, I mean, ideally, certainly they would like us to get this awarded sooner than later so they can start locking in their subcontractor stuff. But we did put them on notice that it wasn't gonna get awarded right away.
Yep.
So,
Good. Okay.
soon though, I hope.
This is probably more of a Becky question, but maybe you can answer it. When you talk about the contingency and we're adding more to it, or maybe padding it, if we were not to use that 600,000, does that have to just sit in a reserve account then, or we can't make a lower bond because of that?
No, so I think what would happen is that we would just move that over to the bond payment fund, and then we would adjust our levies accordingly. Whether we adjusted it all up front or over time, that would be up to us. It's now money that is ours to use, and generally that money gets moved over into the payment fund. So then our schedule of how we levy would then get adjusted because we'd have money in there that we didn't anticipate. Similar to, I know you guys had asked about a couple of the various cash items, and we are about 95% answers on a couple of those. And I think by the time we do any bonding, we'll certainly have a much better answer. But in the same way, 3 years from now, if we come into $500,000 in cash, we could move that into there and then adjust levies accordingly as well.
Could you just walk through an example of that then? So if a $600,000 contingency, we determined, or through the process, we use 300,000.
Yep.
So in your scenario, then, we have that money sitting there, and then we can recalculate the repayment, assuming that extra 300,000 sitting there.
Yeah, so, yeah.
But is that gonna be a lower payment than if we would have just done 10,500,000?
So the way I see it, and Becky can certainly step up and correct me, I know Robin and I talked about this today, actually. Let's just say it's a clean $1 million a year for 30 years for the sake of it being really easy. If we have an extra $300,000 at the end of this in the contingency, we can take that $300,000 and move it into our bond payment fund. So that first year, we'd be levying $1 million for that first payment. Well, we now have $300,000 in there that we could use. So we could take that $300,000 and spread it out over the life to lower the levy every single year by $10,000 or whatever that math would come out to be. Or we could use that $300,000 in the first year, so we'd only levy $700,000, and then we'd be back to levying the $1 million.
So it could be a sugar rush for the first year, but you're gonna still borrow more money than you would have needed to.
Correct. It just, yeah, it depends on then how are you going to end up putting that? Are you gonna sugar rush, as you said, the first year? Are you gonna spread it out over a couple years, spread it out over the life of the bond? If we come into an extra $200,000 in interest in any given year, you can certainly do the same thing. You can move that in there to 1 year, multiple years. I mean, that would be up to the city. The payment will continue to be the same. It's just how we acquire the funds to make that payment every single year.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear Becky say, hey, wait a minute, so you must be right.
Come on up.
So I think then we'd maybe just move into the funding.
Yes, that's,
next
that's,
portion.
So, I believe in your packet, you received a summary of 4 different options, and then, the impacts with each of them. And after our last discussion, we worked with staff, we came up with, two 25-year options, two 30-year options, but they are fairly close to the same. Both with one of the 25-year options and one of the 30 options assumes that debt would be issued for the entire project. The only difference is the term. And then we also ran scenarios bringing in $380,000 of cash. And again, otherwise they're the same, just different terms. On that summary sheet, you can see, the, excuse me, kind of a comparison of some of the key points. I will say, you know, really, it's fairly apples to apples. Difference being the cash, the underwriter discount or the fee that the bond purchaser charges, that is an estimate. It cannot be, per our bonding documents, it could not be more than 1.1% of the issue. It could be less. That number changes over time just based on the deal, or the amount of the bond. You'll see our cost of issuance, which includes, Ellers, attorneys, rating fees, some costs to the county. That is, an estimate, but will not change regardless of the size of the bond. Capitalized interest, again, is that first interest payment, assuming that there would be an interest payment before you actually would collect that first year's tax levy. And so that would be the interest payment in February of 2026. Bond issuers will be expecting a payment, but if you levy in the fall of 25, you would not have funds until August of 26. Project amount you'll see is consistent, and then the rounding, because bonds are sold in increments of 5,000, it's what's left to make it a $5,000 issue. You can see also that we've compared the average debt service. Per statute, you are required to have 105% of the debt service, and so we've given that number in there so you can see what that is. And then again, just a comparison of the total interest over the term for the four options and total principal and interest over the term, so you can see that.
Okay. Any questions for Becky? Or do you like Rebecca?
I did want to
Either
update you
one.
guys.
Both of them are good.
I did want to update you guys on a couple of the cash things we talked about. I know, Bruce, you'd asked about the clawback money for the chart. At this point, I will say we are 95% sure that we have access to all of it. I only say that in, we were confirming with the state on another thing, and so we just asked to make sure they didn't have any hidden MIF dollars in there that for some reason the city captured and was holding on to and had to use in that way. We have now heard from one person that no, you don't, but I'm gonna send you over to this person to make sure, because that's their area. And they said, no, I don't believe you do, but I'm gonna send you back to the first person. And the first person said, no, you don't, but you may want to check back and forth. And so at this point, we're making them put it all in writing, both of those people. So we're 95% sure that that 240 in that clawback would be available for cash as well. You also asked about the ambulance fund. Audited numbers come back. We got about 201,000 in there right now. I don't know if we want to spend that down entirely, especially if we do have a service still using that. Maybe keep some of that in reserve in case for some reason we have to do some repairs on the building, so we actually have that cash available. But I could see possibly using 150 of that 201,000 if we wanted to use that towards cash as well. So those together would get you another about 390 in cash if that's something you wanted to put towards that.
What was the EDA or the abatement amount?
240.
40?
It was 230 in the 2020, at the end of the 2023 audit. I think we had about $10,000 in interest that was gained on that money over the last year.
And when we first looked at this, what, in your mind, where were you thinking this interest amount would be coming from?
The interest amount? That first payment, you mean?
Yeah.
We had talked about that number 380 is kind of where we landed on that first number of the first payment before we got into the newer bids, which lowered the number, that interest payment was about $380,000. And so we kind of figured the city would use cash to make that first interest payment.
Right, and, then after that, I mentioned these two funds.
Correct.
So at that time, in your mind, where were you thinking that cash would be coming? Just a general fund savings?
Oh, that 380 up there. So
Yeah.
that 380 up there was coming out of the, kind of this facilities fund that
Oh,
we
that,
kind of accumulated up.
okay,
and as
okay, I
flex,
remember
yeah.
that.
So that's where
Set
that,
aside.
that does still leave, what, roughly 400,000-ish in that
that
fund in case we.
building fund
For like
thing.
repairs
Okay.
and stuff if we need it, but it does have, yeah, it is that building fund.
Thank you.
So, any questions? I guess we just need to review this and see what would be the best. What would you recommend, putting you on the spot?
I was gonna do that, but I.
I know, I thought about it too, but
So, I guess, may I make a recommendation?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, I do think we should use cash, and I've got no problem recommending using the 380 cash for the first payment, and then even, I guess, using our roughly 390 here just to lower it. Kind of the overall bonding, as we've talked about. I think the question comes down to how fast do you want to pay it off?
Yeah.
Because obviously there is an increased interest amount by having the 30-year, not only in the 5 extra years, but I believe the rate, assume usually the longer the term, the rate's slightly higher. So there's certainly a higher borrowing cost. But to Bruce's point at the last meeting, who's paying for this? Is it the people now or the people that are using it in the future? And that certainly does spread. We're assuming that this building is going to last us for a number of decades at this point. And so,
So the answer is the 30-year option 4. Is that what you're saying?
No,
I mean, not necessarily, and that's where, if it is the 30-year option 4, and I am lucky enough to get to spend the rest of my career here, I will never see the bond paid off. If it is the 25-year, I might get 1 or 2 great years where suddenly our budget can be $700,000 lower than it was the year before. So
and the tax impact, the property tax impact between, let's say, option 2 and option 4 is on a $250,000 house is right around $20, you know,
It'll
so.
increase, it'll reduce over time as
Ye-
more people pay.
Yes, yep.
But yeah,
Good point.
the right now, I mean, the difference between the two, to Maggie's point, is about $20 a year.
Yeah, and if we were to go to option 4, Rick, I mean, clearly the total interest and the total principal and interest is significantly more.
I guess I would probably go with the option 2 myself, but I think there can be a strong case made for option 4. We just end up paying more interest over time.
Yeah,
Well, when you say
a lot more
we,
interest.
I think that's the
But
middle
when I
part.
say we, I mean, well,
Because
but I
obviously,
guess
I've
Tim
done a
lives
lot
out
of,
of town, so myself.
and where the distinction I make on it is, we're not talking about a residential home where someone that's buying is likely to stay in, and that's the person that's paying it. A residential home doesn't have one loan payer, and then a year later has 2 loan payers, and then a year later has 5. And in this scenario, we're not necessarily looking, and believe me, I totally understand the cost of lending and borrowing. But this is different because we're talking about a universe of taxpayers that are paying it, and the next year the universe changes. And the year after that, the universe changes too. And the actual individual person that's paying it, if the community grows, is gonna be paying a less percentage of it every year into the future. And that's the big difference when you think about, at least when I think about the cost of borrowing. Because the cost of borrowing for that individual person is gonna decline. And the longer you have it out, the more chances. And obviously, most 30-year residential loans don't go 30 years, they get refinanced, or they sell their house. We're not gonna sell this house, but the chances of it refinancing are, what's the chance of refinancing a 30-year bond is probably 50-50 at least.
I think, right now, I think on a 30-year issue, there's a chance.
So when you say you're not gonna be around, Josh, I hope you live a long life, but the chances are more likely than you think that you'd be around when this gets paid off.
Well, I just mean working for the city. At my age, at 30 years, I'll be almost 68 years old.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no.
I'm hoping to be retired by that point, but who knows?
Fair.
That's what I mean by.
I'm not
whether
sure
I'll be
the
around.
citizens of New Prague should use that as a factor, or we should use that as a factor.
He's got one foot in the grave, he's done.
I guess my comment on the contingency, just to circle back on that, I'd prefer to see either we earmark some of the EDA or ambulance money as contingency money and then do a 10,000,005 number, assuming we take that risk, and if we don't use it, we still have it for other purposes if we do use it. The mechanics of sticking in the reserve seem a little more cumbersome to me, because you start out with the lower bond, your bond fees are based on the higher number, and that type of thing. So, to me, if we just identify potential contingency money in cash and reduce the bond issues, would be a suggestion, or what I would like to see happen. I mean, 25-year and 30 year is not a big deal. To me, I'd rather have the 30-year because of that issue with who's gonna be paying it over time and into the future. I don't believe that I, as a taxpayer, is gonna be paying significantly more interest over time, because I feel that the community is gonna grow and our tax capacity is gonna grow too.
So are you trying to say that it should be option 2?
I'm not saying should be, I'm saying that's what I would support option 4.
I guess, yeah. What I'm hearing, Rick, is option 2 with a reduction of what roughly you want, like we'll say $390,000, and we'll basically carry that as our contingency. We'll carry it as cash for later. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
So then the bond would be 10 mil, or the
10.5 to
the funding would be 10,000,004 or 10,000,005, which would create a bond being,
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make
Because
sense,
we'd be
Becky?
taking that contingency out of, or we would have the contingency.
Yeah, we would basically be carrying the more contingency.
Bond would
as
be
cash,
10.4 or
and so the bond
10.5.
would lower.
Oh, okay, okay. So you reduce the project amount that we have from the 10,600 to like 10,000.
No, 10.5
So
is
I
not
think
that one.
is it taking this 10.8 number and
Yeah.
reducing it by about $390,000?
Okay,
So instead of bonding for the contingency, we'll just use our cash.
right, yep, okay, I understand. So, just from a semantics here, it would be, so that number we kind of back into with everything else on the deposit to the project fund, the 10,663,950
Down here.
would be the number that we would be reducing
Oh,
Okay.
with the contingency. And so with that, then we would take out, would we take the entire, I'm sorry, how much of the contingency then? Do you want to reduce it completely or a portion of that contingency?
I was suggesting reducing it 300,
Okay,
and you said 390.
I said
I'm
390.
totally
just
okay with
'cause
390.
I said 390 because that was just the
Right.
clawback money with the ambulance fund sitting there. But I mean, I can certainly see either.
I'm okay with 390. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, because we still have the money. We are just sitting on that. Then, like you said, if we're not using it, then our EDA can use it for something else.
okay. So reduce it by the project amount, by the contingency, or reduce the contingency to the project by $390,000. Okay. And then looking at the 30-year term, but also putting in the 380,000 in cash.
Correct.
yes.
So option 4 less 390.
Yes.
Option 4.
Okay.
The issue with the 25 and the 30-year does present a tax rate of 51. Basically, and the other one is 51.4. So there's also a 40% or 40 basis point reduction in the tax rate that we'd be charging the resident or the taxpayers.
Is that good or bad? Good?
You want higher taxes or lower taxes?
No, I want lower
You would provide
taxes,
a
so
less of
I'm
an
just
impact-
wondering.
Less of an impact against all of our
Okay.
taxpayers, so.
Dwayne?
I'm just trying to,
Yep, yeah, no, like Maggie said, those 4 points are roughly $20 a year,
yes, yep,
to the average homeowner.
yep.
say.
Right,
But
but
I always
obviously
get
it's more
Followed
for
up on tax capacity.
commercial property and, so it's a bigger number. If you have a $400,000 commercial building, you're talking about 448. I'm not sure what the.
But see, as that number goes down, that's a better sign, right? Or as it goes up,
And
yeah, the percentage.
the lower your tax rate, the less taxes you're gonna pay.
Okay. I always could never grasp that. Okay. Anything else?
So I think in general, I mean, what do we need for the pre-sale report, potentially? Cause I know we continued it at the last meeting and we were looking at bringing it back. So what sort of guidance do you think that you need from the council? Obviously, we can't make formal decisions, but we can give guidance to make the formal decision at the next meeting.
Let me just confirm what I heard, and then if I am correct, I will go back and update numbers and then bring a pre-sale report that reflects it. So we're looking at option 4, so 30 years. We'll put $380,000 of cash into the project. We will take the project construction fund and reduce that amount by additional cash that we will hold of $390,000.
Correct.
And I guess what's the general group consensus on
I'm
that? 'Cause I know
okay with
we've heard from a couple people, but I wanna make sure that, Becky here is kind of got the general consensus, so we come back together. We don't find out that Dwayne and Rick are adamantly opposed and they're ready to burn the building down.
No, I think she's got it down, and I think that, obviously we're taking the lowest bid, so it was a very informational night.
And other than that, just a little heads up, the pre-sale report will have different numbers in it and different term, but, you know, a lot of it'll be a lot of the same format and look similar to what we talked about at the last meeting. I'll just have option 4 with these adjustments reflected in it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second? I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.